giving a brief introduction into our topic, specifically circular economy. The concept of circular economy is very important nowadays to society because it's very closely related to human, social, and economic activities. Effective utilization and recycling of resources are in line with the concept of sustainable development. It cannot be separated from innovation of science and technology, and the progress and development of technology to make the utilization of energy more efficient and scientific. And on that note, I'm calling up on Mr. Saheed Olushola Balogun to please share his presentation, and then we'll be able to engage and then ask questions or make recommendations as the case may be. Please welcome with me Mr. Saheed Olushola Balogun.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator. Okay, so with respect to the topic we have today, transitioning to circular economy in Nigeria, in Lagos State in focus, we're primarily speaking to ourselves, either as residents of the state, and looking at what exactly are we looking at when we're looking at the circular economy. We've heard of circular economy in many parts of the world, but we're yet to see a lot of it, happening in Nigeria. Not like it doesn't exist, and for these reasons, we would all look at it and then ask ourselves, do we have a circular economy in Lagos? And the first thing is stimulating the new economic opportunities from what would have been discarded. That's primarily what the concept of circular economy is. And this transition starts from the process at which the product itself is developed. So someone who is developing a product that intends to have other secondary uses or tertiary uses after the first life cycle would have put that into his product development concepts, either by allowing the components to be easily detachable, so that if Mr. A needs the leg and Mr. B needs the arm, the arm could be useful to Mr. B in future, and while the leg is useful to Mr. C. So that's the basic concept which designers take into consideration while developing the product. We will see that from some furniture that are made today in parties. We see, the legs are detachable, the tables are detachable, they're trying to conserve space, and all these things. By extension, when we take them into the process of reusability, we will find out that some of these components, standing alone by themselves, would serve some form of being a reusable component. That's one. Two, the process of being able to remanufacture some of this product. So in the past, we used to have plastics that once the manufacturer is through with it and the user buys it and is also through with it, that product is really, is difficult to maintain or repair. But today we see a lot of materials, either people moving from one form of aluminium to a form of steel, or even the plastic. You sit on some plastic chairs today and this plastic looks like, this chair looks like something from granules of plastics that were remolded together. So we have that concept of product remanufacturing going on. And I also believe at some point we used to have newspaper prints, and you will feel the print and definitely this is a recycled newsprint. This material is from a recycled newsprint. So in essence, all I'm trying to say is we have some form of circular economy already in the country. However, to what depth, and to what length are we able to measure and report to say this amount of billions of naira or millions of dollars is what the circular economy in the state translates to. I guess that's the area where we have a huge gap. Now, going further into the environment, we still have a large untapped segment, and that's, so looking at Lagos, 20 million population. Yesterday it rained, and I still saw a lot of plastics, along the drain, and you'll be like, the people come to dump them here, but it's just like one person dumped his own plastic here, another person dumped his own somewhere, and then the rain moves everything together. But with the consumption model, if it's improved, first thing is, our consumption model is really, grossly abused, in my own opinion. So if I go to buy a biscuit at a grocery shop, they want to give me a polythene bag to, pack. But I'm like, I just want to buy a biscuit and probably eat my biscuit. You don't need, or I want to buy a bottle of water, and they're like, oh, you need to put it in a bag so that it's like people should not sit there drinking water. Or so this type of model, promotes the waste that we have. I believe we can start by changing, those type of things. And I remember when I was a very small child, if we're going out to even buy these things, we will be given, the polythene bags from home or the jute sacks from home that, okay, take to the place. So that process of reusing, so you can imagine me going to a store every day for the year and I go with the same bag to buy the same item. It means what I will have got 365 bags in a year if I do not go home, and make my bag reusable. So that concept lies with us, and as residents of Lagos, conscious of a cleaner environment, we need to take that into our consumption model. We need to adapt it, to fit into the climate change and building up a circular economy. In the other part, we have the collection and sorting of waste. So there is a huge potential for recycled waste, but sometimes how would you feel going to the large dump site at Olusosun and trying to pick up plastic? Probably for a small, medium-scale entrepreneur that's trying to build a recycle business, it's just going to be like, it may look tedious and maybe expensive, but it could come cheaper if right from the home or from the offices where these PET bottles and other things are being dropped, there is a clear sorting facility to sort, and if possible even sort and compress, because this plastic is going to occupy space, and before you know it, in some few hours, it's going to get filled. So but if there's that maybe mini compacting capability within that place, so that collection model and ability to sort from start makes it easy to create a segment for the circular economy, and that drives into the recycling process. And very important for us to measure is the digitization process. So we need to be able to say, okay, in Lagos we have X number of sites for the collection of these products, and this is X number of partners or recycle operators that are licensed with the Ministry of Environment to operate these services. This is X ton of plastic or even the glass materials, the metal scrap. This is the tonnage of scrap materials that we have. So all this data serves as incentives or even motivates those who are players in that sector to say, look, we can go higher, we can double this figure and this type of thing. So digitization is very important. And then with that, of course, there's a lot of definitions of circular economy, but I just, for the purpose of this, I picked up a definition from Ellen MacArthur Foundation website. And primarily what it says is that transition to circular economy does not only amount to adjustments aimed at reducing the negative impacts of the linear economy. So most of us reduce the linear economy, but rather represents a systemic shift, that builds a long-term resilience. So Lagos State talks of the, Lagos State Resilience Strategy, and generate business and economic opportunities. So you have those within the value chain of that circular economy having, a new opportunity or added opportunities to whatever they were doing. And that provides the basis for an environmental and societal benefits. If I pick the example of Tesla, so Tesla became a company that was profitable for just one simple reason. It's the carbon credit system. So you had in Europe and America, any manufacturer that could not meet certain emission levels contributes like a penalty, but it's like a contribution to the carbon credit system. While Tesla producer like 100% or they have a highest percentage amongst the manufacturers of the vehicle. That means in the end, they are a net beneficiary of the carbon credit system, and that adds into their, that allows them to subsidize or reduce the cost of their car and effectively, make more profit and become profitable within a shorter time that is expected from a company that had to come out with innovation. So I believe in the states too and in the country at large that we need to start looking at things to give incentives to identify sectors of the economy that can create a cleaner environment for us, a penalty for those who are polluting the environment. So I will give an example of base stations. I know Lagos State would have the highest number of base stations in Nigeria. If we could say, okay, if X number of base stations operates, their generators for X number of hours, then it's estimated that this is their contribution to the carbon emission. And then there should be, a fee to be paid for that excess carbon contribution. So if a company operating a cell site has 1,000 cell sites and probably 300 of them are green, 700 are non-green, in the end you could net it up and say, okay, based on this is your... So we could come up with our own local concepts, to reduce this emission. We may not feel those impacts yet, but the challenge with the climate change is once the impact comes, it becomes like a persistent problem. We can move to the next slide. Next slide. Okay. Okay, no problem. So primarily, that's this concept of our ability to reuse is the key differentiator between us getting into a circular economy and being compliant. So just give me some seconds, please. So, to other areas that we would like to talk about, from the concept, we had the concept of the general economy, starting from the agricultural sector. By nature, the world was developed to be secular. Well, subject to some opinions. So I'm not talking science now, but just the general observation of nature. We have the plants. So Last Park, they have plants, and we primarily from the science field, we know the responsibility of plants with respect to how they manage carbon dioxide, take out carbon dioxide, and then give out oxygen, and then we breathe out oxygen. So today, as a young child too, we used to have flowers in the house, real plants, and so we used to feel comfortable that the air is clean and things like that. So these are natural concepts, and we really need to get back to some of these natural concepts and translate them into economic value, measure this value so that we can report them and let them serve as motivation. We also have the plants, the plant crop animal life cycle, where the animal will feed on grains, and they will contribute their own compost into the environment, which serves as nutrients for the plants to grow. But with technology, we could improve this process of the collection of the greens needed for the animal, the collection of the compost or the waste from the animal, and how they can get reprocessed back into the agricultural sector, the feed cycle for the fish, or even for the aquatic world itself as well. The cycle that applies on the land also has its own equivalent in the water, and Lagos State is largely having one of the largest intra-city flow of water. So these are life cycles that promote circular economy. But everything gets back to the point of measurement and reporting. that if we don't have these things, measured and reported upon, we would actually lose out on the real value that we should, have received from this wonderful and natural process of having a secular economy. On the other side too, we have the aspect of the concept of the Lagos State government trying to make Lagos State a 21st century economy. And the core of it is how fast can we grow. So I've seen from the roadmap of the Ministry of Environment that they really want to look at the ability to have biogas. So we contribute waste every day into the septic tank, and just that septic tank alone in the house environment could provide energy for cooking and for some other small scale uses at home. And all these initiatives, so when you start putting numbers to them, this is a cubic volume of gas created, or thermal energy created as a result of biogas, then we would be able to clearly report our contribution to a cleaner climate, a safer climate, and of course to the economy of the state as well in financial terms. Like was mentioned there, the engine of everything is money. So if there was no money from the carbon credits system, probably Tesla would have been bankrupt, and any innovation they are coming up with will have been gone, and any benefit we could have got from having electric vehicles would not be there. Lagos State is clearly the state in the country that has the largest opportunity because we have the highest population per square meter in Nigeria, and that gives us an opportunity to easily address those issues around the product design, our consumption model, and we could, as a center of excellence, serve as those who other parts of the country and Africa at large will follow up from. And we also have the opportunity for human capital development. So in the process of all those things, there is a manufacturing process, and that goes along with an education process as well. And education comes with new opportunities. So we have that opportunity of creating new career, new roles within the ecosystem of the climate change. And the good thing about some of these skills is they are not local skills. So once they are picked up, they could be applied in any other part of the world, and Lagos State will drive that further. An important part of life is water. So irrespective of what we do, whether it's from the plants, recycling the metal scrap, the biogas that is possible, these things, if properly managed, ensures that we have a cleaner environment at large. But very importantly is the water we drink in, because water itself is a critical component of life, and the waste that we put into without being able to make them reusable can actually make water purely unsafe. So I watched a documentary on TV about Lebanon, and I was told that you can't even bathe for your child with water either from the well, from the bowl. You can't use it. If you use it, the child will develop all sorts of skin diseases, and so they buy bottled water to have their bath. It can be that bad, and it's pollution that leads to all these things, either from industrial or from residential use. So we really need to give ourselves personal motivation, and on our own part, we believe also the government will have some roles to play legislatively to make the process of a circular economy work for us and measurable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saheed Balogun. It was a very interesting presentation that you've given to us. I'll just summarize some of the things that he said before we go into the interactions and engagements. So he said, he talked about strict policies that need to be put in place for waste management. For example, restricting the use of single-use plastics. He talked about the huge potential for waste revenue through waste sorting from source, and possibly having compacting capabilities at the source, such that it's easy to evacuate. He talked about digitization, capturing data that would motivate the players and even the investors in waste management. He talked about the value chain opportunities for different sizes of businesses. He talked about the need to create incentives, for people to identify with that they can either invest in, circular economy initiatives or at least be willing to pay if penalties are put in front of them. He talked about advocacy, and he talked about the carbon credit system, using Tesla as an example. I think I've benefited a lot from that conversation, and I would like to put it to the audience. If you have any questions, we can take questions, suggestions, recommendations. But before we do that, I would just like to talk about three things that I picked, or that I picked that were not mentioned. So I'd like us to discuss e-waste. How do we currently handle e-waste in Lagos State, and what are your recommendations, for handling e-waste? Because we have a lot of e-waste that is generated, and I'm not quite sure if it's being handled in the best way. The second thing, since you're from the Ministry of Science and Technology, I'd like you to just give us a brief on what exactly is happening. We're seeing everywhere is being dug up. Cables are being laid, all these nice colored cables are being laid everywhere. What is going on with that, and what do we expect to see? How do we expect that to improve Lagos State, in line with being a smart city? And the third thing would be asking specifically, what kind of data do you think we can start to capture from now, even as the Ministry of Environment, to help us to start to look at, being able to capture data? Is it the quantity of plastics? Is it production? What kind of data do you think, we should be capturing, from now? But before you answer those questions, let me allow the audience to also ask their questions, so you can ask everything as a whole. So if anybody has any questions you'd like to ask. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Contributions as well, suggestions, recommendations, 4, 5. Okay, so we'll take those 5 first, and if we still have time, we'll take more. So, the lady in the red jacket.
Thank you, Mr. Balogun, for that interesting presentation. And it's a good thing that Lagos State is already thinking about the circular economy. Well, mine is a form of a contribution and a question. You did mention the extended producer responsibility. This is a program by NESRA. So I would like to know if Lagos State is already keying into this, because with the ERP, extended producer responsibility, the manufacturers take responsibility of the waste from their product. So the industries really have to be part of this circular economy initiative of the government if it has to be successful. So I'll give you an example. You have producers of plastic bottle waters in Lagos State, and you also give example of, the waste plastic pollution. So what Lagos State should do, you engage the manufacturers, so they take responsibility from the product design that you just talked about. They take responsibility for the waste of their product. So for example, if it's Coca-Cola, so from the beginning, they take responsibility that if the waste from their product goes into they find a way, a mechanism to collect those waste. So that is when, circular economy will really make sense in Lagos, because you really need to involve the manufacturers. And the collaboration. I didn't introduce myself before I started. I'm Dr. Doherty from Yaba College of Technology. So I also want to recommend that, because usually researchers, I'm a researcher, we do a lot of research, and there's a gap between the researchers and the policymakers. The policymakers don't know what the researchers are doing, they are not interested, and you have a lot of solutions from researches which the policymakers should really benefit from. So I think collaboration is also key. Then the other comments or the other questions about ERP that I just talked about, how is Lagos State keying into this? You need to involve the industries and manufacturers in circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Doherty. The gentleman.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, good to see you, Sahid. Well done. I'll take it from where Dr. Doherty stopped. I know that Lagos State started to do something on the extended producer responsibility. I am not sure how far they went, but I think the challenge we have seen in most places is that governments are eager to adopt new opportunities for revenue generation, and then to then have the discipline to dedicate that resources to the reason for which it is taken is another thing. So what Lagos then needs to do is to follow up with the discipline to adopt such a model and ensure that the resources therefrom is strictly used for, because part of what that resource will then use to create is to support small businesses across the state that will fill in the gap for and then help to drive that circular economy we're talking about in this space. You would agree with me that in the immediate past administration, Lagos actually invested a lot in environment, but perhaps took wrong decisions that kind of set the state back. Now we need that kind of boldness to take big decisions. I'm talking about the Visionscape saga. But we need that kind of big decisions again, but taken in the right direction. Lagos State needs to invest in its waste management. So you look at the PPP arrangement now, and you look at some of the PPP trucks, for instance, they don't inspire you to think that this is some good business. In fact, you think that it has to be a PSP. Yes, the PSP, thank you, man. It doesn't inspire you because of the way they do their business. And if you are going to stimulate circular economy, these are some of the things. I mean, that was what the Visionscape was supposed to bring for us, but it didn't. But we can still have the same kind of boldness, to make huge investments, support the PSP, support people who want to play in that sector, have the vision to collect them. And another challenge we're having in that regard is that governments are usually shy of taking some very hard political decisions. For instance, I believe every household in Lagos should pay for waste. Most households, and I did research in 2007 around that COCA, and I shared it with Loma, that showed that most households around that place do not pay. So government needs to make that huge decision to whether you generate waste, you do not. It's statutory that you pay. And then government will follow with the discipline to dedicate that payment to waste management. That is the way we build circular economy around the environment that both helps us to maintain our environment and create wealth. So lastly, what I would like to add to what my brother Said have said is that we're expecting, and I'm encouraged by what we heard yesterday about what the Ministry of Science and Tech is doing with universities, where you train the entrepreneurial challenge. So I want to see a lot more of this, such that, especially dedicated to helping Lagos to deal. Lagos is not as clean as we want it to be, and that's the fact. But there's a whole lot of opportunities, and one of those is what the Ministry of Science and Technology is doing. How do you expand this such that many people can then key into it? And then do we also use technology to enhance this and make it more attractive to younger people?
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your contribution, sir. Although you didn't tell us your name.
I'm sorry, I'm Sulaiman Aribaba, I work with Federal Resource Center.
Thank you. Okay, but before the next question, let me just quickly point out that Mr. Saeed Balogun is from this Lagos State Ministry of Science and Tech. So even though some of the things that your contributions are related to him, he may not be able to answer those questions. But we've taken the feedback on behalf of LOMA, who's the Lagos Waste Management Authority, that we'll share with them. What I know is that LOMA has recently set up a LOMA Academy, where they're training young people on waste management principles such that they can then start to set up their own businesses by themselves. I know that LOMA has a Lagos Recycles office where they're working with recyclers on the best ways to manage and collect waste from source. I know that they've also recently launched an app called the Pakam app. So they've incorporated information technology, and it works just the way Uber works, such that people can collect their plastics, sort, and then request for pickup. And then they get points, and they're able to build up points. And that way, we're also encouraging them, whereby those points can then be converted to maybe cash or something.
What's the app again?
Pakam, it's called the Pakam app, and you can download it and use it. Yes. And it comes with a card, such that you can then redeem your card points for maybe supermarkets and other places, petrol stations, in the future. So I didn't want it to be under too much pressure to answer those questions. That's why I thought to help out. The next person, please.
Hello. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Jumoke Kasim. I'm the CEO of Naturescape Consulting. I'm a sustainability consultant. We have. So I would like to comment on the extended producer responsibility thing. I served as a technical working group member for Nigeria when this.
Okay, if you don't mind, if we just ask the question specifically,
because we need to.
Okay, or your contribution just specifically because we need to end in the next 5 minutes.
So the EPR was created for several of the different manufacturers. So there was the e-waste group, and the idea was for them to collect, but there is a lot to be done about getting e-waste collectors and matching them with the e-waste recycling. So that's something that needs to be matched. Yeah. Then on single-use bottles, there are actually reusable bottles now made of silicone. We have some we can share later. And then recycling the waste. There is another solution to convert plastic waste to electricity. You can get every hour 1 megawatt of electricity. And there's another machine that converts waste from the landfill. You can do 50% from landfill, 50% from fresh waste, and you can get 750 tons of waste recycled daily to electricity to get 85 megawatts of electricity every hour daily. So that will make a lot of impact in cleaning up Lagos and making Lagos to be a trailblazer for other states and Africa.
Thank you very much, madam. We've taken note of your contributions. If you can share your initiatives after.
Absolutely.
The relevant stakeholders look into it. The last contribution, please.
Thank you. I am Dr. Oluseun Popola. I'm from Yaba College of Technology. I'm a researcher too with my colleague, and I've done a lot. I'm an advocate of circular economy, and the purpose of circular economy is just to ensure that you reduce or minimize your waste to zero, as that's my own definition. And so we came up with a research on what we can do as a community, where you can turn your waste products into useful, product, and you can be responsible as a community. Actually, we've written a proposal on that, working with Yaba College of Technology community on getting zero, on minimizing our waste to almost 0%. We are still working on that. I'm an advocate of e-waste, and I've done so much. I've written a lot of paper on e-waste. And so when you talked about e-waste, my namesake, I knew that the drive is there. I've been to so many sites on e-waste, and we've done a lot in talking to, most especially these Hausa northerners that are there burning the waste casting to release copper. There is so much to be done on e-waste, and there is so much to harness from e-waste. But the bottom line is that these young men from the north are only doing it the wrong way. And if we can get them together, we will get so much as a state. And not only that, we've written a paper on the blood contaminants in the blood of these e-waste scavengers. And so I believe that our drive towards circular economy is just the way forward. And we can only do it a community at a time. If Yabate,
let me interrupt you.
Yes,
because we need to go. But I appreciate your feedback. We're not even giving our speaker a chance to speak because we have all the answers. And I think taking from what you've said is a lot needs to be done between the policymakers and the researchers. So that's what I've taken from this. And there are people from the senior directors from the Ministry of Environment that will take your contact details and contact you afterwards so that we can sit down together and see what are the best ways to handle waste. And also from what I've taken is a lot of focus is on plastic waste, but there are other types of waste. Yeah. There's medical waste, there's e-waste, and there's so many other things that we need to also focus on rather than just looking at plastic on its own. Sorry, ma'am, before you go on, let's just allow Mr. Said Balogun to answer or contribute or say anything if he has them.
Thank you very much. So I don't want to broaden the categorization of waste, but just to draw attention that the circular economy is the natural order of life, and in every area we need to adapt, so that the world is sustainable. We've got a lot of sustainable development goals, outlined by the United Nations, and our ability to do this, the more we do it, the better we get in this area. On e-waste, electronic, the good thing about e-waste in quote is it's actually even a large-scale economic weapon. And if you look at what has been the competition between China and the US with respect to ability to manufacture chips and everything, it has been about their ability to recycle the components that are required in this thing from e-waste, rather than compared to the cost of mining, those materials freshly. So, like you said, those burning it, just doing this in a crude way. But you also agree with me that the private sector, of Nigeria, present in Lagos, need to, put in investment in this thing, because Nigeria, population of over 200 million, the subscribers we have is still less than half of the population, and that means there is opportunity for a lot of e-waste, because these phones will get spoiled in 1-2 years, and then but the components there are of high value. So that's that on e-waste. On the fiber optics that we see being done in Lagos, it's part of the effort at ensuring a safer environment, and of course optimizing the costs of doing business in the States, which is also like a form of circular economy. We don't want people to dig multiple times, to pass fiber through the same path, and in the process you even damage someone else's fiber. But beyond that is to improve the ability of making Lagos a 21st century economy, by extension a smart city, allow connectivity for people to learn, resources, internet, and I mentioned this digitization. So this fiber duct sits as a center, for the process of digitization. So imagine I have a compact waste collector somewhere, and the container is filled with IoT, Internet of Things. We can identify how many of these things are located, and through fiber, optic ducts. So the state government is having fiber optic ducts, apart from the ones that telcos will use. Through that, you could transmit this information to the central collection points of the waste management authorities, And then we also, at some point, we will have to start measuring even gas emissions at separate places, and these things have to be real time. And there are a lot of data, so you won't be able to be going, send somebody to that place so you will go and collect the data. So, but through fiber optic technology, we can, the sensors are based on IoT, we can collect this data, measure the volume, and give reports. And like we said, reporting is a form of assessment which improves further performance. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks all for all your contributions.
Thank you very much. Okay, so they're about to drag us out, but we'll take, before you, somebody else raised up their hand. The gentleman in white, but quickly, 1 second, say your contribution question, and then we'll take her and then we'll go.
I just want to advise the speaker. It has to do with his ministry. The issue of laying of this cable, I think there needs to be synergy between the ministries, departments, and agencies of the state. Like that activity has really impacted on our gardens a lot. So for a state that is promoting greening initiative and still destroying those gardens, I don't think it's encouraging. Also, I observed that some of the areas, you've already put these cables, Minister of Works are already building them up. So it seems there is no synergy at all, because all these projects must have been in pipeline. So if you are working together, I'm sure they will have told you we are working on this road at this time. So please.
I think also, thank you. I think also is to maybe supervision. Maybe the cables are not being dug deep enough, such that when somebody else is doing something else, it's coming up again. But I guess it's taking that feedback.
So, well, these are challenges, and we always want to improve collaboration. But I can tell you, we're collaborating with all the necessary ministries and agencies, all of them. However, the space at which they have to dig 3,000 kilometers, in the state within a year, it's actually very huge.
I think yes, we're collaborating, but we can do a lot more.
Exactly, we can improve on it. Thank you very much for.
Okay, so the last comment, quickly, 60 seconds, ma'am.
Thank you very much. My name is Mrs. Paul from Federal Ministry of Environment. I want to, is an information I want to pass. Already, NESDRA has a regulation on extended producer responsibilities. That's one. Then two, on collaboration between policymakers and researchers. There is already a project between that is domiciled in University of Lagos. The name of the project is Evidence Use in Environmental Policy Making in Nigeria. So there is a collaboration between policymakers and researchers. And the aim of that project is for researchers to, it's not a private.
Sorry, madam.
Okay. So, see, the project is aimed at, enhancing collaboration between researchers and policymakers, and it is also, to enable researchers to base their research on policy-driven demands. So already there is a collaboration between Federal Ministry of Environment, states, Lagos State Ministry of Environment and Water Resources, and Science and Tech Abuja. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Sorry, sir. Thank you. Okay. So I think the takeaway from this is that there's something that exists, but the truth is there can never be enough. So if these doctors from Yabatech are researchers and they're not aware of this project, it means that what we need to do a lot more in terms of, it's never enough. We can do so much more. There's so much technical capacity out there that we need to tap as a state government and take advantage of. So yes, this is one of them, but we can do so much more with different research groups or scholars, as the case may be. So we do appreciate your contribution, but it's also good to also take feedback from other people such that we can work together. A lot of things that have been discussed today, even though I'm in the Ministry of Environment, I had no idea. So it's good to always learn on a daily basis. No, we don't have 1 minute any longer. Okay, so sorry, hold on, madam. Okay, so we have information from Dr. Sanu.
Actually, the information is towards the appreciation from the girl to the town. And just to tell you that on the EPR, as you have said, presently the Lagos State government is handling the plastic policy, and it is championed for EPR and PPP. So already we are engaging the manufacturer, most especially the Coca-Cola and other people, and what we are saying is this: take responsibility for this thing, or the other way around. And that policy is at the last, at the tail end of its ratification now.
Thank you, Dr. Sana. I think what we need to pick from them is that we should involve them, such that if there's anything we've missed out, they can also point that out to us. On that note, I want to thank everybody for attending this session. We can be here for hours and we can still be talking and contributing and asking questions. I'll just say that if you meet Dr. Sanos after this session, you can contact him, get his numbers, get his details, and we're happy to engage with people, organizations and groups to make the Ministry of Environment and its agencies move forward. We want to shine, so we're happy to shine with everybody. And we also like to thank Mr. Said Balogu for taking his time to take us through the concept of circular economy and how it's connected to digitization and with a focus on Lagos State government. Thank everybody for listening, thank the online audience, and we hope to have things to contribute at the main session from this session. Thank you very much, everyone.
A quick announcement, please. Thank you all so much for attending this session. So it's lunchtime, and we would like everybody to go to the ground floor or the first floor to get your meal ticket and have your lunch. Kindly go down to the first or the second floor. Kindly go down to the first or second floor to get your meal ticket so that you can have your lunch.
You said ground floor?
I said, okay, the ground floor, the first floor.